Budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Has really never been in a worse position in its life until this format. Don't be like the 30% of you guys that have not smashed the living crap out of the script, and smash this so we can get to 103,000. So I wanted to talk about Budget Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit here. I know John recently did a video talking about the harsh realities of Budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to just be up in front with you here. It sucks to be a budget player in this format. A lot of the things that you need to break boards aren't really accessible to the average player at this point in time. Now, that's not to say that budgets or options are not available to you. It's just Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats come and go in cycles. We are just unfortunately in one of the most expensive cycles that we've been in a long time. So before you get discouraged and be like, oh, there's no hope here. First of all, patience. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game that goes in cycles, all right? I want to be up in front about that, all right? Just every format is either a good format or a bad format to somebody. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The entire player base, at some points, like the format. Other people don't like the format, all right? It's really hit or miss with the player base. So I want to establish that groundwork here and be like, yeah, people like the game at points, people don't like the game at points. All right, and being blocked out of playing the game at budgetary options at that point in time sucks. I get that. Now, in a format where you have the adventure package as one of the most dominating forces in forever, all right, and then you have on the forefront of things the Scythe package running around sub to that. All right, so you have two very powerful, distinct things in this format that are what we would, I guess, would you say, tainting the format here. So I guess under that expression here, that you can say that because of those two things existing, that makes things more expensive, makes these decks harder, and then you have Destroyer, Phoenix, Enforcer as well. So you have three relatively dumb things that are going to cost money. So now, when you're deck building at this point in time, and you're a budget player, you got to ask yourself, well, was Destroyer, Phoenix, Enforcer something that I may have got lucky? You always have to factor in for the one guy that did get lucky and pull it. And, I mean, straight up honest, like, Destroyer, Phoenix, Enforcer is definitely not truly a budget option here. When I look at this format in terms of things, I see that Forbidden Droplet is deemed a pretty high-class staple by a lot of players in order to break boards. But you don't need these cards to do well. So now we start going down the sub-list of options here. So you come over to Flundereese as an option. All right, you're like, well, you see a lot of the top competing list here need Pot of Extravagances. Need Pot of Prosperities. Well, you can't get those. You can just play Pot of Extravs then. All right, well, what about not having a Mega Rise, Robbie? Like, what am I supposed to do about that? All right, and my answer to you with that is you have Apex Avian. You know, having a deck that can, I think players really underestimate this style of videos when we do these discussions, because your baseline goal at the end of the day is you need a deck that you can go to locals with and you can farm with. All right, and I stress this a lot because a lot of budget players get it in their head for some reason that there's just like, oh, I'm playing this deck for the next 8 years. No, that's not how this works. Every single goal of looking at Budget Yu-Gi-Oh! You need to have a deck that you can go to locals with and farm for packs. And you know what you're going to do with the stuff that you pull from those packs? You're going to work on getting a better deck. That has always been my mentality when it comes with these things, is these are stepping stones to get better. I don't know where this budget player mentality comes from, or players with, you know, like, I'm not going to use the winnings I get to make my deck better. All right, like, if you are strictly just in and you're like, nah, this is it, I'm not putting more in, you have the complete wrong mentality for how to get better at being a budget player. I'm going to just be completely honest with you, all right? Yu-Gi-Oh! And in the perfect game needs to be a hobby that can add on to itself. Now, if you're somebody that gets like $10 a month to add into it and, you know, tournament entries aside, or you pull you pull an ultimate rare. I mean, like there's always that people that get the good consistent rewards here to do things. You pull an ultimate, or you pull that ultimate Fusion Destiny, your luck's with you. Congratulations, you just got $150 that you can spin back into a deck in terms of trade value. Or you can trade it for a bunch of other staple cards that you need to make your deck better. All right? That I also wanted to get that out there and just be blunt honest about it, is your budgetary options need to be able to expand. All right, you can't stay stagnant in that mentality. All right, the game self-sufficiently feeds itself as long as you're doing things correctly. So, base goal being a budget player in this format, for example, with Flunderies. All right, base goal, get something that we can play, so we can start farming. The potential for an OTS pack. Like maybe a 3-1 finish or something. You also have DDDs on the other side of things here, where the deck is a very high skill based deck. Yes. And I hate to say it, but a lot of players don't have the time to learn a lot of things. And that's the other trade-off of things, is when I look at a lot of budget players here, and this does not encompass everybody, I get a lot of players that are like, no, I only play this game like an hour or two a week. All right. Well, you probably shouldn't be playing DDD if you only get to play this game an hour a week, because those combo lines are going to take time. You're going to need to learn those things. And I've seen it. It's possible. Once again, I mean, there are exceptions to every rule here. But between Flunderies and DDD, these are both two decks that you can pick up. And I don't see why you can't at least get a 3-1 win with them, with the appropriate time and things with that. All right, so baseline, you have two decks you can pick up. All right, at that point in time, we're going to start taking whatever winnings we're getting, and we're going to spin it right back into those decks, and we're going to optimize them. That's the one thing that budget players need to get through their heads right now, is you can't just, I pulled a $150 card. I'm going to go sell this for $150. And you're just not going to put it back into your deck. All right, like, that's one of the biggest things I see with budget players, man. Well, more of the top end, this format, the most expensive engines in the game continue to get worse. The only sigh of fresh relief that budget players will get here will be the release of the Albaz Structure Deck in about a month and a half. Once the Albaz Structure Deck releases, the entire Branded Fusion package actually becomes splashable. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of decks out here that can actually pick this up and incorporate it into their strategy. Now, the downside of this is, if you're a true budget player and you don't have access to a lot of the pieces needed to make this, it's kind of stink. You're just going to be like, oh, well, this sucks. But they're looking like a sub-invoked engine, for example. Alistair's and Friends aren't that expensive, and you can pretty much do some crazy things with, like, Branded Invoked. Shadal stuff isn't too expensive as well. Once again, you take this sub-engine, you try to combine it with other things to get success. Moral of the story right now, budget is not in a good place as of right now. Branded Structure Deck, I think, will make things 1% better for you guys. But in terms of budgetary options, you have decks that you can pick up. It's just, when you look at the player base, there's always this sense of entitlement that goes, no, I want to play this! This needs to be cheap. That's not how it works, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to be that bearer of bad news and tell you, yeah, I understand you want to play the adventure package and you feel that it shouldn't be an $up-tillion engine. That's cool. But reality is that it is an expensive engine because of how powerful it is. All right, not all Yu-Gi-Oh cards are in fact made equally, and that is the harsh reality of the situation. At least there are options available to players out here to pick up. And like I said, once the Branded Structure Deck comes out, we'll possibly see some sort of change in options for the player base, and hopefully things will be. I don't expect to see any change in this format for a hot second, because we are in one of the, when we head in through tax season, through these formats, they have always been the most expensive formats of the year, all right? The August season down is usually your cheap turnover, and then once you hit tax season February on, for that NAWCQ season, you start turning over those more expensive cards. It's been the same pattern for the last 9 years, and last year was the only true, real exception to that rule, but it was still a very expensive format nonetheless. It was just a little bit cheaper than it looks. So, that's Yu-Gi-Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave a comment about how much you guys think. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button, so you guys don't miss out more awesome content. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later on the day, guys. Peace. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.